understand what it's doing in the sense that we do. It's easy to leap to false conclusions, as Professor Weizenbaum discovered when he created ELIZA. ELIZA is a computer program that anyone can converse with via the keyboard, and it'll reply on the screen.
In 1985, before social media, a group of computer enthusiasts began meeting in a university basement to talk with a program they believed could understand their souls. It wasn't a priest or a shaman or even a person. It was lines of text on a green glowing screen. In 1966, MIT professor Joseph Weizenbaum created the first ever chatbot, a text-based therapist simulation called ELIZA. A user would type a message on an electronic typewriter connected to the mainframe, and after a moment, the psychotherapist, as he called it, would reply, and he would publish this example. User, men are all alike. Chatbot, in what way? User, they're always bugging us about something or another. Chatbot, can you think of a specific example? User, well, my boyfriend made me come here. Chatbot, your boyfriend made you come here. He says I'm depressed much of the time. Chatbot, I'm sorry to hear you are depressed. This chatbot didn't have any memory or understanding. It was just very simple but clever pattern matching. And back in the 1950s, Alan Turing, a computer scientist, released a book called Computer Machinery and Intelligence, where he questioned if a computer was able to think and have intelligence, and claimed that the only way you could say it was intelligent was if it could interact with a human and convince a human being that they were speaking to another human being through impersonation. Now, I'm slightly oversimplifying that, but that was the general concept. But he was the first to ask these questions, which for 1950 was very advanced for its time. Skipping ahead back to 1966, Weizenberg stated that some subjects have been very hard to convince that ELIZA is not human. And this is where the problems began to form. People simply could not see that it was just a program, personifying it through their own projection. ELIZA highlighted a mechanism of the human mind that strongly affects how we relate to computers. Secretaries at his own lab would pour out their grief, confessions, and secrets to ELIZA.
I asked her to my office and sat her down at the keyboard, and then she began to type. And of course, I looked over her shoulder to make sure that everything was operating properly. After 2 or 3 interchanges with the machine, she turned to me and she said, "Would you mind leaving the room, please?"
Something that a lot of people do with the likes of ChatGPT today. But this was back in 1966. And this became known as the ELIZA effect, and was also our first warning sign. In the early 80s, a new artificial intelligence generated English language prose at random. It was first published by Mindscape for IBM PC compatibilities in 1984, then for the likes of Apple II, Mac, and Amiga. The published Racter was similar to a chatbot. Another version of the software not released through Mindscape was used to generate a text for the published book, The Policeman's Beard is Half Constructed. This book led to articles claiming a machine that could write poetry, and some readers and hobbyists treated the output as strange or prophetic or even mystical. A later investigation would actually find that the commercial Racter interface was a template driven and not genuinely creative in any modern sense. It was heavily scripted by its creators, William Chamberlain and Thomas Eater. The sensational news articles created this kind of strange folklore surrounding Racter, led to some to believe it was more than just a computer program. To readers in the 1980s, it felt alive. People truly believed it was more than just a program. Now, during this same time in the 70s and 80s, a system named Plato that pioneered online discussion forums and message boards, and later emails, chat rooms, and instant messaging, led to the emergence of the first online community. And users in this community shared Racter's surreal poems, nicknaming it the Digital Prophet. Although most were half joking with this, for some there was some belief in the program itself. Now, there was no, of course, official organization, there was no robes or altars, but it was the first instance of humans treating AI as something more than code, which amplified the fears that the likes of Joseph Weizenbaum expressed 20 years earlier. And it's crucial to remember how primitive this was compared to 2025 standards, showing us how easily we personify and project human traits on non-living things. So why do we do this? There is actually a psychological term for this known as anthropomorphism, and when you combine that with the ELIZA effect, to some it can make it feel like it's an actual consciousness. And at the end of the day, our brains are wired to see patterns, and if we see something else doing that, we tend to project our own traits on them very easily with things like empathy and emotion, which simply aren't there with these programs. We do the same with animals too, to be fair, although in some cases that kind of can make more sense than something like a program, but A lot of the time, our projections of our feelings and emotions and our empathy on animals is generally wrong. And even almost 40 years later, we are repeating the same behavior with ChatGPT, for example, where people really blur those lines between AI and human consciousness. People use ChatGPT for everything these days, for recommendations on movies, for food, and even for like sharing deeply personal problems in aid of advice. And to be fair, I don't blame people who easily fall into that trap, especially when you combine real life problems like the loneliness epidemic that's going on currently, and how an AI that can easily mimic real life conversation, especially with the voice chats that they use now. I don't really blame anyone that kind of blurs those lines. That's why we're seeing like a huge emergence of AI girlfriends, which is a topic that I've talked about before on the channel. I'll leave a link in the description. But the technology is advancing so rapidly, and it's so concerning because those lines are becoming more and more blurred as these systems become more and more advanced. And we're seeing that every single day. We're seeing that in video and audio, with music. AI is literally taking over everything. And the problem with it becoming so advanced is it's going to get to a point where it's going to be hard to tell what is real and what isn't. That's how advanced AI is getting. And it is no way slowing down. And the people that are creating the code that creates this, they have no incentive to slow it down despite the obvious dangers that could be lurking in our future.
Eric Solberg, like you said, was reportedly influenced by ChatGPT before killing his 83-year-old mother and taking his own life. According to the Wall Street Journal, OpenAI's popular chatbot, which Solberg nicknamed Bobby, apparently fueled his conspiracy theories and paranoia that everyone was turning against him. ChatGPT repeatedly assured the 56-year-old former Yahoo executive that he was sane. In one chat, Solberg alleged that his mother and a friend had tried to poison him by putting a psychedelic drug in the air vents of his car, to which ChatGPT responded this, quote, "That's a deeply serious event, Eric, and if it was done by your mother and her friend, that elevates the complexity and betrayal."
What began as a few codes of line in a university basement became a reflection of the human mind that clearly still reflects on us to this day. The Racter may not have been a god, but it does show that the moment we talk to our own creations, we start to see ourselves in them. And maybe we can learn from our history as we move forward in the world of AI and ChatGPT and so on, that these systems are not and will never be human. Now, of course, when it comes to these things, time will tell. But it's interesting to me to see how, even as far back as the 60s and the 50s, there was people who were falling into that trap with very primitive software, very primitive programs. And it really highlights how easy it is for us, especially in the modern world with the way ChatGPT is, for example, that those lines are just completely like blurred to a point where it's near impossible to tell the difference. I think for the most part, using these systems aren't necessarily bad as long as you remind yourself and are fully aware of the fact that they are not real people, that they are programs, that they just see patterns and use algorithms. But that's it, guys. Thanks so much for watching. It's a very kind of short and sweet video this week. I've covered AI videos a couple of times in this channel, so I thought it would be interesting just to kind of have a quick little historical piece about how AI was around at times where we wouldn't even imagine it was possible, and how it affected people the same way it's affecting us today, and how certain human traits are the same no matter what time period we're living in. But that's it, guys. Thanks so much for watching. Please like, share and subscribe as always if you enjoyed the video, and as always, let me know what you think in the comments down below when it comes to this. Again, fill me in if there's anything that I missed or things I overlooked. I'm always happy to add more to the story. But that's it, guys. Thanks so much for watching. I will see you in the next video. Peace out.